Rev up your engines!
Well, you think you've heard everything, but believe it or not, Toyota has patented a varying thickness steering wheel that changes thickness while you drive it. Why do you think? Well, it's to warn the driver something's going on. Part of collision avoidance system. You're holding on the steering wheel. If it starts pulsing, getting thinner and wider, it's going to get your attention, right? And the advantage is a lot of the warning systems are just visual, right? You get a visual warning. Your eye looks at the light. Okay, what's that? Oh, the light's on, right? If the steering wheel pulses, you're still looking forward. You can feel it with your hands. You don't have to look. Of course, if you look at the steering wheel and watch it expand and contract, that kind of would negate its safety, but, you know, we are pretty visual people, and if you're looking forwards and you feel something with your hand, you're going to immediately start looking around. Why is it warning me, and see what's wrong? It's a direct on your hands, so you feel it. Crazy idea. I know, maybe it would work, right? Of course, it's hooked up to a bunch of other systems that have to activate correctly. Who knows if they would? They probably would end up breaking, and you're holding on to the steering wheel, it's pulsing all the time. You're like, what the heck's going on with my car? An interesting idea. I don't know if it'll work out in practice, but pulsating steering wheels may be on your way. Well, here's something that, of course, they never think of the end result of their inventions. Manufacturers are now making tangle-free wiring harnesses. As far as I'm concerned, being a mechanic, that's going to lead to repair nightmares. They figured out how they can knock out wiring circuits volume by 90% by using these flex fuel harnesses. Well, what they're doing is they're putting all the information for all the different sensors and all the different computer modules on just a few wires. And when something goes wrong, everything can go bananas. And you'll never be able to figure out what the heck is wrong with a car. I see that already when they went to what's called CAN, Controller Area Networks. They put more information on less wiring, and the CAN wiring, it'll have low speed, mid speed, and high range information all traveling. I've seen it where it trips a high speed code, which is a fake code. It's actually a low speed code, but because of the interactions, it makes it very hard to fix these cars. Simply, sometimes it takes days, if ever, to figure out what's wrong, and now they're making even more information on even less wiring. This uses significantly less material to make them, and copper costs money, right? So it's cheaper to make them, and less insulation because there's less wires, and they can make them cheaper because there's less wires that have to be connected, but they are not as serviceable, especially cars are getting wrecked. So one wire gets cut, boom, the whole thing can go bananas, and it can start shorting out everything, and then goodbye car because you got in a little wreck. And how it always goes, if they have flexible wired harnesses, they're going to say, you got to buy the whole harness anytime something goes wrong, which you probably would, because the old ones you could splice in because there were a bunch of wires, right? But the new ones you can't really splice in because it has to be a perfect splice because all the information is going on it, and you can't just cut the wire, solder, and put together. It's not as easy as the old ones to fix either. So maybe it's a cheaper way to make cars, but for the average person, it's probably a bad idea when you have to get your car fixed, especially if you get in a wreck. Mike Tanguay says, should I be worried about slight frame bending in the front of a 2014 Mazda 3i Touring? Depends what you mean by slight. Now, did you buy it that way, or did you run into something and bend it? The problem is cars now have unibody construction. They used to have a frame, then the body bolted on the frame. Now, the frame and the body's all one piece is welded together. So when you got frame bent, then you got to junk the car. Now, if it's a tiny bit off and the tires can be adjusted by front end alignment so it tracks down the road and nothing's cracked and it's just bent and it handles good and doesn't pull and brakes straight, go ahead. But you see cracks and things starting to go, no, it's not okay. And you can't fix them. Then you just get rid of the car. You can't fix the frame on a modern car. Austin Cook says, even though it's my birthday, I have a problem. Well, everybody's got a problem when they have a birthday. It means we're getting older. I got a 99 Silverado with 340,000 miles. The instrument cluster intermittently stops and only acts up when it's above 35 degrees. I know all about those. I work on a lot of them. The problem is this. That instrument cluster was made in China. It's a piece of crap. You're lucky it lasted 340,000 miles. Do take it apart. Simple to pop it out. Look at where it's connected in. Maybe the connections are getting loose, but more often, the instrument panel has a backing. There's a circuit board, and then there's the copper circuits, right, and they're on a plastic piece. They usually buckle and start to come apart. And if they are, you'll have to get another one if you want to fix it. But do take it apart. Maybe a wire's corroded or something. But more often than not, you got to get another one, and they're not cheap. Now, of course, you can always go to a junkyard, right? But you got to get one from a similar year so it'll fit in the vehicle. And then you got an old one from a 99, and it might not even work, or it might break soon, because they're all made in China. And they're all, what, 23 years old now. Cardi Brockman says, why does my 2000 Ford Ranger do a hard start in cold weather, then shut off? Well, when it's really cold outside, your car has to work harder to start. It needs extra fuel. Anything that's wrong with your car that doesn't make it run perfect is going to show up when it's ice cold and make it conk up. Start with the simple crap. Maybe you need an air filter. It might be clogged up. Check the spark plugs. Maybe they're worn. You need new spark plugs. Throw some fuel injector cleaner in the tank. Maybe the fuel injectors are clogged. Have your battery load tested, because a weak battery will do exactly that. You need a lot of power to start the car and then run the ignition system, the fuel system, everything else. And if the battery's low, it can conk out like that. Do the simple things first. Have it tested. Don't think, oh, is it a computer? Oh, is my engine wearing out? You always start simple and work your way out. I've seen people replace engines in cars, and the only thing wrong with them, they had a bad ignition coil on the spark plug system. So always start simple. Marcelo Bond said, question, is a Volkswagen 3.6 liter V6 any good? 6 engines put out a ton of power. They're fun to drive. They're zippy. But they are one of the most hellacious engine designs ever for working on. When they do wear out, and they wear out when they get older, they cost a fortune to repair because of their design. It's a crazy German design. And when it runs great. But when it breaks, you're going to wish you'd never bought one. Brendan Hosinger says, what are your thoughts on a Fox body? All right. I'm opinionated. I think the Fox bodies were one of the ugliest cars ever made. That said, they can be really fast. I had a customer in Houston that had one. He had 580 horsepower. Rode like a scalded ape. Just went. It scared me. I stopped driving it because it scared me. And I'm a fast driver. That thing was so fast. I just think they're ugly. I don't like the way they look. I was so happy when Ford stopped making those things and went back to the original style of the Mustang. I like the original style better, but mechanically, they're screaming vehicles. There's no arguing that. Robert Romero says, I got a 2019 Silverado with 14,000 miles. I'm way ahead on loan. I'm worried about breakdowns. Should I get rid of it? Hey, you only got 14,000 miles. Even Chevys don't break down that fast, you know? Why? If you're the original owner and you got a 2019, so you got a 3-year-old truck and you only got 14,000 miles, you don't drive much. I wouldn't. I mean, if you want a truck, keep it driving. You don't put much mileage on your vehicle, right? But if you don't need a truck and you can get good money for it, now go right ahead. That's your choice. But I mean, if you're going to get another truck, it would be stupid to get rid of that truck. Sure, you'll get a lot of money for it. But on the other hand, you're going to pay a lot of money for another truck. Now, let's say you're sick of trucks. You want to get a cheap car. Sure, sell that, get a lot of money, and buy a cheaper car. All depends on what you want to do with it. Alan Brammer says, hockey, do you still play? Yeah, in my mind. I got a 1998 GMC van with a 5.7 lifter tick. I've been driving 1,000 miles. Tick is no better, no worse. I've tried additives, it's still there. Keep going? Yeah, what the heck? Back when I was a kid, everyone was driving around in GM trucks and GMCs. Clattered like mad, but they still ran down the road. What the heck? If it still runs, if eventually it gets bad enough, you can replace the lifters one at a time. Get a stethoscope and list around and say, is it this one, is it that one? Find out which ones and replace them. It's not all that hard. Take some stuff off on the top of the engine, you know, pull the heads or anything, and you can replace lifters on those things if you want to. Dennis P says, Scotty, should have bought a 2017 Honda Ridgeline with 150,000 miles. They're excellent trucks. They got a shorter bed. If you don't mind the size, they can run a really long time. And they're Hondas. They can run a really long time because they're Hondas. They make great engines. The main thing, as far as I'm concerned, is everyone's gone nuts and they're asking too much money. I would say it depends on the price. You know, if they're asking 25, 28,000, I wouldn't buy it. I would never spend that kind of money on a vehicle with 150,000 miles. But if it's got a decent price, they're great trucks. They can last a long time. Honda never really got into the truck war things. It's the only truck they make, but they're really good trucks. Everybody I know bought one and they like them. S702 says, I need to replace the TPMS sensor on one of the tires for my '09 Civic. I can get them from $14 to $60. Can I use the cheap sensor? No, don't. Stick to the OEM ones. They're designed for the car. These Chinese-made ones, half the time they don't work. They won't jive with the rest of the system. You'll have one that's got one frequency and 3 that don't. Go OEM when it comes to sensors on TPMS systems. You don't want to go buy these cheap $10 ones. Half the time they won't work. They won't jive with your system. Realize it's got to be reprogrammed anyway, so you need to pay a mechanic like me to reprogram it. So don't buy the cheap ones. It's not worth the hassle. Buy the OEM ones. Now, there's lots of places to sell them. You don't have to go to the dealer and pay their ridiculous markup. Go online and look. You can find them at other places, sometimes half price. So you don't want to use the cheap $10 ones. That's a big mistake. Sometimes they won't work at all, or they'll last 6 weeks, then the battery goes dead. Don't use the cheap Chinese-made aftermarket ones. You'll regret it. Phil DeVergio says, Scotty, any plans for Valentine's Day? Yeah, I'll make videos and help all you guys out like usual. And I am a chocoholic. But if I went out and bought a box of chocolate, I would just eat them and eat them and eat them. I admit it, I am a chocolate sugar addict. It does something to the endorphins in my brain. You give me a box of chocolate and I know it's sitting there. I might not eat it now, but when you go out of the room or go to bed, I'll probably eat the entire thing while I'm watching something on TV, watching a mystery or watching one of those crazy Russian car crash videos. I'm out of control when it comes, so maybe I should never buy any. Because if I did, I'll just eat them all. Maybe buy them one at a time. We used to do that in Houston. They had these chocolate shops and it was ungodly expensive. I mean, some of them would be like $5 a piece. But that way you only get 2 or 3 of them and eat them and you're happy. Keep the box away from me. Same way with ice cream. If I bought a gallon of ice cream, I'd eat it all. So we buy the little bitty ones. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.